and welcome to this Thursday edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm your host, Anthony Smith, and coming up, we have Andrew Cox with a shipper econ update. But first, we're going to go to Zach Strickland with a carrier update brought to you by PowerFleet. Stay tuned.
Everyone, and welcome to your Thursday carrier update presented by PowerFleet. I'm Zach Strickland. So we're watching our volumes start to slide a little bit, towards the end of the week here. Our outbound tender volume index was up above 12,500 just a few days ago. Now it has started to dip a little bit, about a 0.5% drop day over day. As volumes do appear to be in correction a little bit. Does it mean that it's a trend? No, not at all. It's just one day, but it does. It is kind of expected at this point, as volumes have been operating at a level, obviously looking over the last 3 years here, at a level really unprecedented in terms of tender volumes going out there in the United States and moving across the country. So, at some point it's going to come back down to earth. We thought it would happen a little bit quicker after the 4th of July. Again, it's just not happening as fast as we anticipated, but this could be the start of that falling. And again, as volumes drop, we anticipate capacity will start to loosen up a little bit thereafter. Again, depending on where that's happening in the country, that's how quickly that occurs, et cetera. But again, operating at this level, it's going to take a little bit of time for tender rejection rates to really start to come back down with any significance, unless those volumes really come down a lot faster than they are today. Looking over the last couple of years here, we've got our 2019 and 2018 lines in green and red. And you can see that we are about 15 to 25% above year-over-year volumes right now. And again, we see this traditional seasonal drop throughout July as volumes kind of slide down into August. And then it's kind of hit or miss on what happens in August and September thereafter. But then it kind of settles down in October before picking back up for the holiday. So again, waiting on this thing to settle back down a little bit more. A lot of volumes happening right now. We'll have to wait and see, but it does look like it's going to last through the end of July unless there is a dramatic drop. Looking at outbound tender market share. So where in the country are volumes increasing, decreasing week over week? Where are they losing a lot of attraction in the country right now? Looking out here in the map, you can see the darker blue there with Los Angeles. Los Angeles sitting over there in the corner of the country, been one of the most prominent markets over the last couple of months as we see a lot of replenishment freight moving across the country. Atlanta starting to gain a little bit of market share again. Ontario, however, losing some of that market share at about a 0.9% drop week over week. Houston, Texas, been a big market for the United States over the last month or so, starting to lose a little ground. Dallas, again, another huge market, starting to show a little bit of signs of weakness coming out of there. And these have been two of the more active markets here over the last couple of weeks, especially surrounding the 4th of July. Kansas City, Missouri, any carriers operating out of there here in the next little bit, they should see a little bit boost in that freight. And Kansas City has been one of the stronger markets in the last month or so. So again, Denver, Colorado as well, looking pretty strong. Grand Rapids continues to outperform as it gains a little bit more traction in the market. Florida, however, looking soft. This has been a trend that's been developing over the last little bit. Florida has not been as strong of a market as it was in May and early June. So anybody operating out of there needs to pay attention to that because they won't get the utilization that they were used to. Looking at our most volatile markets, so where in the country are we seeing some tightness? It's happening in a consistent spot down here around the Mexican border, down there in southern Texas, around the Laredo market, El Paso, et cetera. You heard Luke Falaska talk about that yesterday on the broker update. Again, continues to be one of the more less stable areas. You see Houston over there with outbound tender rejections. Again, volumes have dropped out of Houston, but they haven't impacted the rejection level just yet, as carriers have not figured out how to cover that capacity still. Again, we are starting to see that trend change, but some of the larger or smaller markets really seeing a lot of the volatility right now. Not a lot of big markets like we saw earlier in the year or earlier in the last couple of months. Laredo, Texas, just booming right now in terms of volume. Rejection rates really shooting up to historic levels on Laredo. So anybody operating on the border today can really take advantage of some incredible spot market activity. And that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.
Hello and welcome to your shipper update with an econ twist. I'm your host and lead economist here, Anthony Smith, and I'm joined with Andrew Cox, one of our key researchers, and we're going to talk about some of the things happening on the manufacturing side. Andrew, what do we have?
Yeah, so we just got the data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is the Empire State Manufacturing Index, and for the first time since the pandemic began, we see that the manufacturing sector in New York has increased. They're now back in growth territory. And this is a diffusion index, which we talk about. You know, this zero level is kind of the barrier between contraction and growth. Again, first time we've been in that growth territory since the beginning. And the good thing about this data is that it's super timely. This was just collected between the 2nd and the 9th of July, so it's really telling us about what's going on right now.
Right, Andrew, you said this is very, like you just hit the nail on the head, it's very timely. When we're looking at other indices that were just released, like industrial production, just came out, it's going to show a month lag. And so a lot of these times when we're looking at what's happening right now in the economy, these macro indicators are just a little bit too late to the punch. But when we're looking at the Empire State Index and a lot of the other regional indices, the Philly Fed just came out as well.
That's right.
It's very timely. And one of the other things that's timely is some of our sonar data sets as well. High frequency data when we're looking at things like the outbound tender volume index. And so that's what we have up here. And the purple line, we have volumes, and in the green line, we have the Empire State Manufacturing general business conditions currently on a year-over-year basis. And what we can see is that volumes were increasing over the same time frame. And one of the benefits of using sonar in conjunction with some of these macro indices on a regional basis is that you can get that higher frequency data and kind of get a sneak peek as to what's happening and what volumes are looking like in that particular area.
Yeah, and this translates directly into what we saw from, these are two of the components of that Empire State Manufacturing Index. One here, we've got new orders and shipments, and this is great for both carriers and shippers. When we see those volumes increasing, you can see up 14 percentage points and up 15 percentage points over from from June to July. So things have picked up significantly moving into July on the orders and shipment side of things.
And order is very key because when we're looking at orders, that's really indicative of what's going to happen in the coming months, anywhere from 30 to 60 days down the line. I know going through these numbers, a lot of people are expecting, because things are starting to kind of ramp back up with different resurgences, that might be a headwind for manufacturing overall, in particular New York. But what we're seeing is that there are potential some near-term gains, but there is some kind of long-term optimism, I think, when the future index is applied, right?
Yeah, there has been a little bit of a pullback in the optimism, but I think it was simply not because people are truly less optimistic, but because there was almost like when June hit and things got a little bit better, I think people kind of rushed to optimism. They kind of overgauged their optimism, and that's why we saw, I mean, the general business conditions looking 6 months out, as for June, was the highest it had been in a long time. I can't remember the exact time, but it hit almost 60 here in June. So I don't think that it's so much that we're all that much more pessimistic about the future. I just think we got a little bit overexcited here. So we do see that pullback, but it's still relatively high. You can see, historically over the last 5 years, we're still looking pretty good, looking 6 months out.
So a lot of headwinds, a lot to really consider. Every day is going to be a different day, different challenge, and that's why it's kind of so powerful to use some of that OTVI data and sonar. Andrew, where can people find more?
Yes, they can go to freightwaves.com/passport for all of my team's work. Our podcast comes out every Tuesday. Great quarter guys, me, myself, Kevin Hill, and Seth Holm. We'll have a bunch of research coming out this week from JP's team that will be hitting your mailbox tomorrow morning.
Excellent, Andrew. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for tuning in. That's going to do it for the shipper update. And that's also going to do it for this episode of FreightWaves Now. The content doesn't stop here. We're always streaming around the clock, so check out our FreightWaves TV app on all your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple TV. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.